CW was the first of the broadcast networks, because CCA begins with several days of cable. But CW was the first of the broadcast networks to do their TCA day. And I did that morning, I don't know if I told you this, that morning I even said it to Trish, said to my wife, I bet they're going to announce they're renewing Arrow and The Flash today, because those are 100% no-brainers.
Yeah, guaranteed.
And they had a big panel for both shows with like a ton of people.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I bet they'll renew those. And if they announced anything else, it would be Vampire Diaries and the originals, which we also kind of know are coming back, and they also had a smaller panel that day.
Yeah.
I did not expect the 8-show early renewal that they did.
Yeah, a big show of confidence, and also a show of not even so much confidence, but faith in some. We'll talk about this, like the 100, not exactly probably getting the ratings that they wanted to get, but they like the show.
Yeah.
And they want it to keep going, and they want it to catch on. They also renewed Jane the Virgin, which was not as much as a surprise because she hadn't won yet.
She won that night.
She won that night.
Which is crazy.
But even being nominated for a Golden Globe,
right.
And then she won.
Yeah.
They're really psyched. I believe that's the CW's first Golden Globe win.
It is. It's their first major. I mean, I know the Golden Globes were sort of debated, because of who gives them, but still, it's the CW's first major category win and what we consider the major award.
Yeah. So it was an interesting balance of very obvious picks.
Yeah.
Because they do super well for them.
Yeah.
And some things that they're like, no, we're going to show some faith in this series and hope that it catches on.
We should say, it was Flash, Arrow, Vampire Diaries Originals, Supernatural, Jane the Virgin, The 100, and Reign all got renewed. And yeah, the main thing that, I can't help it, and we were just having a conversation before we started recording about how foolish it is to only go by overnight ratings now, and even the networks. Yes, as much as that's still where they make the most money, everyone's shifting.
Yeah.
And so you've got a site like TV by the Numbers, which I will glance at too, but a lot of the ways that they go by predicting like the absolutes of, well, there's no way this is coming back and stuff are starting to go away.
Yeah.
And so, CW is always an interesting network because they only program 10 hours a week. So there's less just room on their schedule. So everyone on TV by the Numbers, from the people who write for it, from the commenters, were like, oh, well, they're going to have to make big decisions in a few months because besides those no-brainers that we mentioned at the top, it's like when you get down to The 100, Reign, and then iZombie and The Messengers, the mid-season stuff, there won't be room for them all, right? So it'll definitely have to make those tough decisions, and we're not going to know until May.
Right.
So the fact that they did renew, especially Reign and The 100, I think, were the two where it's like, no, we're just renewing them now. Because Jane the Virgin was probably going to get renewed, even though its ratings, it debuted really well for them, but then it's fallen a lot. But just it brings such a cachet for them on a network that
doesn't have any.
Even though we love a lot of their shows, it's like it just puts them in a different arena.
Yeah.
And I think that they look at everything. They've always been a network about online views more than anyone else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors we hear that play into it as far as overseas. Like even when Nikita was on, and I hear the same thing about The 100. And none of this is, no one will like sit down and say, yes, for sure this helps. But we keep hearing shows like Nikita and The 100 have, do well overseas. They look a lot, because it's co-owned by Warner Brothers, who produces a lot of these shows, and CBS, they'll look at that. It's like, Warner Brothers owns The 100. It's not doing great ratings, but if they own it, if they think like we're making money off overseas sales and Netflix and whatnot.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I think that, and we've talked about this before, but not just for CW, but across the board, these decisions are getting more and more complicated for networks. I feel like the one that's probably the most ruthless about ratings still is probably CBS, but that's because they're CBS and their ratings are insane,
Yeah.
And when they're not insane, they'd rather just move on.
Right.
But, they made a joke during the executive session, like, I think we could put Big Bang Theory on the moon and it would still perform. And it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
But I think that in general, when you look at the cable networks, those decisions, especially in the wake of things like Breaking Bad, where it took time for people to sort of catch up with it, and there is that opportunity for people to catch up with things and catch on when something's really good. And I think that that's the CW's hope with even, it will be to a far lesser degree, but something like The 100.
Yeah.
Where they know that people like yourself are advocating for it,
The 100.
Right, no, but that they talked about that a lot, about how like third party, because there's so much more television now and there's so many platforms, that recommendation, it's not like it rests on you, Eric Goldman.
Right.
But it does, no pressure.
Yeah.
But what happens is, I think in aggregate, like TV reporters are all saying you should watch the show.
Sure.
And then whoever's listening to them maybe does so, and then they tell their friends,
Right.
and that's how it happens. Everything's changing so fast, and I don't think people really know how to respond.
No, I mean, on a pure fan level, I was so excited the 100 got that renewal, because I was legitimately shocked. I thought the 100 had a 50-50 chance, and I thought they'll make that decision in May. I never thought it would get a early renewal in January. So it was like, wow, that's awesome. And it just takes, when you're a fan of these shows and you do get so nervous every season, oh, is it going to make it? You're just like, now you can just enjoy the rest of the season. It's coming back,